So hi everyone, good morning. My name is Ali, as it was said, Alicia Ann. I'm a 22-year-old sociology student at Concordia University, and this is going to be my presentation. I just want to start by saying thank you so much to everyone who worked behind the scenes to make this conference happen. I think in moments like these especially, we need to feel connected. We need to feel this sense of community. So thank you so much to everyone who worked to make that possible, and especially to Michelle for thinking of me and inviting me and thinking that I was equipped to participate to such an amazing and beautiful project. So thank you so much. It means the world to me. So yeah, as it was said, the name of my presentation is How to Come Out When You Have an Invisible Disability to Yourself in Friendships and in the Dating Scene. So hopefully at least one person can learn something out of this. I really thought it was important to cover this because I feel like we rarely talk about the emotional impact that having a disability can have on people. And I also felt like we don't talk about the relational aspect of it. So I think it was important to have this discussion this morning. Having a disability can feel very lonely at times, and it seems like the most obvious solution for that would be to talk about it, but it's hard. It's hard to come out sometimes, and so today that's what we're gonna cover essentially. The goal of this workshop is to give tips on how to come out, but also just to tell a story, because I know that I've struggled with these things and I still struggle with a few of these as well. And hearing someone talk about this would have been so helpful to me. So hopefully I can be that person for at least one person today, because there's really no feeling better than coming out of loneliness. So of course, I'm no expert on this. This is just based off of my personal experience. And so it only makes sense that I tell you guys kind of what I'm dealing with. I am disabled myself, obviously. So I will give you just a little background on, yeah, my experience and, you know, what I'm dealing with. So in 2018, I was diagnosed with limb-girdle muscular dystrophy, which is caused by dysferlin deficiency in the body. It is a type of muscular dystrophy, and muscular dystrophy is a neuromuscular illness that is characterized by extreme weakness due to muscle wasting and atrophy, and it is also a degenerative disease that has currently no cure. To put it simply, my muscles don't fully regenerate when after going through some type of trauma. So every time I take a step, it scratches at my muscles, and my body cannot fully repair from that because my DNA cannot produce enough of the protein that is required for muscle repair. Some people with muscular dystrophy or spinal muscular atrophy, which is another type of neuromuscular illness, never walk. Some people can walk, but only for a few years, and some people can walk for many years. As for the diagnosis, some people are diagnosed at birth, and some people like me are diagnosed later in life as their symptoms develop. To give you kind of a background on how it was like before being diagnosed, I was a very active kid. I was always running around and trying to find a way to perfect my cartwheels. I played soccer and I did cheerleading in the summer for many years too. The summer that I stopped playing soccer was the summer after I turned 13. I was having horrible ankle pains after my games, and I couldn't run as fast as I used to, and my feet weren't as quick. At first, I didn't think much of it, but I told my parents that I was having these types of troubles, and they could also see when they went to my games. You know, I wasn't as good as I used to be, And I also noticed that I couldn't open my hands completely, which means I couldn't do cartwheels anymore. My parents didn't do much of it at first, but when I got old enough to take care of my um, medical stuff, I decided to see an ergotherapist to see if they knew what was going on. And they didn't, and me neither, obviously. At that time, I was in college and I was studying musical theater, and I absolutely loved it. It was my ultimate passion, and I was so happy to be there. But I was struggling a bit in my dance classes because my legs were getting weaker. In my second semester, I failed my dance classes because there are some movements I simply couldn't do. The administration of the school told me that I could retake my classes the year after with the next cohort of students that would be coming in the fall. And that's what I did. I accepted, even if it meant putting me a whole year behind in terms of graduation. They also told me that if I had a diagnosis, they could accommodate uh, me and my limitations, and I had a chance to graduate because I was performing in all the other classes. Ultimately, I had to drop out of musical theater because even after uh, having my diagnosis, the school couldn't accommodate me, and I failed my dance classes again. The day that I had to drop out of musical theater was also the same day that I learned that there was something physically wrong with me. I didn't have a specific diagnosis yet, but I had received the results of my muscle biopsy that I had done a few weeks prior, and it was shown that my muscles were very, very weak, way too weak for someone my age. I was 19 at the time, and I didn't have any other health problems. So my case was transferred to a neurologist that specializes in neuromuscular illnesses. Dropping out of college was probably one of the hardest things I ever had to do. It destroyed me to a point that to this day, even years later, I can't even begin to understand because it was also the first time that I was seeing how ableist society is. The administration told me that there was a possibility for me to graduate if I had a diagnosis, but the truth is they didn't do the research on what are the options for disabled students who struggle in one part of their program. And so I lost a year and a half of my life in a program that had no possibility of giving me accommodations. So I had to drop out due to my disability. For a long time, I told myself that they lied to me, but really it was worse than lying because they didn't care about my mental health, they didn't care about my time and my future. And that's why they didn't do research prior to the end of the school year. Now, fortunately for me, I am out of there. And like I said, I'm a sociology student at Concordia University now, and I absolutely love it. And that really was my true calling. Now, with that being said, I feel like most people wouldn't know that this is my story because I don't look disabled, whatever that means. And the reason why is because my disability is partly invisible. An invisible disability is a disability that is not immediately noticeable. They can include brain injuries, chronic pain, mental illness, gastrointestinal disorders, and much more. I do not use a walking aid like a wheelchair or a cane, and even if I have a particular way of walking, people usually don't notice it right away. But eventually, people have to know. Not everyone, of course, but society is not built for people with disabilities, and so I am often put in a situation where it is noticeable. In my everyday life, my biggest obstacles are stairs. They're everywhere in the city, and you simply cannot escape them. But how do you say it, right? That's going to be the theme of this lecture. How do you tell someone that you're disabled? To be honest, I'm still navigating all of this. I'm still learning how to tell people because it's hard. I don't think coming out is something that you ever master. I think it's something that you do and slowly get better at. But it can never be perfect because you have no control over the person's reaction, but also because the relationship you have with the person you're coming out to is different each time. No relationship is the same. The term coming out is, I think, very appropriate though. We usually associate it to the moment that LGBTQ plus people come out to others about their identity. But I think it also works for people with invisible disabilities. Now, I won't ask which one is harder simply because that would be absolutely useless, but also because it would erase and ignore the fact that a lot of people live at the margins of these two identities, meaning that they're both LGBTQ plus and disabled. But in both cases, coming out can be scary, dangerous, and anxiety-inducing. It can make you feel like you could possibly lose the person if they don't accept it. Now, some people still live in the 1800s and think that one chooses to be gay or trans, and that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But I would like to believe that people don't think that one chooses to be disabled and that you're undoubtedly born either able-bodied or disabled. And as for the people who become disabled due to an accident, for example, that nobody chooses to get injured. And so knowing that and understanding that disability is not something you can just change, why would people be against that? I had friends tell me, I get that it's stressful, but who would be against that, Ali? Now, I want to start by saying this. You do not have to come out to anyone. You don't owe people your medical history. Some people will make you feel like you do, but I'm telling you, you don't. First of all, you probably don't have your medical papers on you at all times, or maybe you don't even have an official diagnosis yet. I was in New York City last summer, and I walked into a McDonald's to go to the bathroom. Upstairs, there were, I suppose, a full bathroom with multiple stalls and a one-person stall downstairs. I saw someone with a stroller come out of the one-person stall, and I tried to go in after them, but the employee that was there told me that I couldn't use the bathroom because this specific stall was reserved to people with strollers or, and I quote, disabilities, and that I had to go upstairs to use the regular bathrooms. I told the employee that I knew, but that I wanted to use this one so that I wouldn't have to go upstairs. But she insisted and told me that I couldn't use it. And when I asked her why she thought I wasn't disabled, she simply replied that I didn't have a cane or that I didn't use a wheelchair. And so I was totally fine going upstairs to go to the bathroom. I asked her why she thought that canes and wheelchairs are the only indicators of disability. And so she just rolled her eyes at me and told me to just go. But you see, this is the reality of many people living with invisible disabilities. We constantly have to fight for our rights because people simply don't believe us. Yes, I can go up a flight of stairs or two if I need to, and there are no other options. But if there are other options, I won't. The problem is when there are people gatekeeping these options, when you need an employee to unlock a bathroom or to ask them for permission to access an elevator. You really can't go up these stairs because it's really not that much, and I really want to go take a shot with one of my clients. That's something very real that a waiter told me once at a restaurant. I've been called lazy for asking for elevators, and I've been laughed at. I mean, you could use going up a few stairs, you know? I am not the only one. so many of us and so many of you have the exact same stories. And of course, all these encounters can obviously lead to disabled people feeling insecure about their disability. It can literally feel like a insecurity that someone would have about their nose or their teeth, with, of course, added institutionalized oppression. But the difference is that you can hide it. The thing is, though, you will have to reveal it a lot of the times. And when you get there, it will feel like a big deal. And the other difference is that you will have to come out to people you simply don't want to come out to out of obligations because, as I said earlier, the society is unfortunately not built for us. And that could include a boss, a coworker, a teacher, or even a friend or a significant other. This lecture will touch on how to come out to yourself, friends, and in the dating scene. And the reason why I chose these 3 areas is because these are things that I personally struggled with, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. First, I touch on the part about coming out to yourself because I truly think it is the starting point of all of it. If you're not comfortable with your disability, you will never be able to successfully come out to anyone else. You need to first love yourself and be comfortable with your limits and boundaries in order to feel comfortable with the simple idea that someone now knows about your disability. The second point is coming out to friends. That's also very important because all of you definitely have friends, and eventually you'll have to hang out with them in person. I mean, not now because we're all stuck at home, but you get what I'm saying. You have to be comfortable doing that because you will have to do it multiple times because you have more than one friend. But you need to keep in mind that the people who are not willing to stay by your side are not people you should spend energy on. And then finally, the dating part. That's the juicy stuff, right? And by juicy, I don't mean like delicious slice of pineapple juicy, because unfortunately, that's not always how it goes. But again, similarly as with friends, you have to understand that your needs and your boundaries are just as important as the other person's. And there will be people who will respect them, I assure you. We will also be having a conversation about desirability politics and how to navigate the dating scene considering your social position as a disabled person. These discussions can be difficult to have, but they are important because once you are aware of these realities, you're better equipped to respond to negative and toxic attitudes. So where we left off, that was kind of the introduction. So as I said earlier, coming out to yourself is important because it is the first step before coming out to anyone else. The relationship you have with your disability is not only the only one that matters, it is also the most important because it will reflect the way that you communicate your boundaries. If you're not comfortable with your disability, it will be hard to first set up boundaries at all for others. If you feel ashamed because you need certain things, you will not demand them. And if you do, you're more likely to let people break them constantly. You're also more likely to break your own boundaries and find yourself in uncomfortable situations because you're afraid of what people will think. For example, accepting to go to somewhere, even if you know the location of the overall event will cause problems or difficulties because the location or overall event is not good for you. I personally know my physical limits very well because they seem to be the easiest thing to frame. However, one thing that I have to work on is my psychological limits. My disability causes me a lot of social anxiety. Being in public and have people notice my disability is kind of my worst nightmare. It's being at a club because my friends asked me to come and I said yes, but I couldn't see what the stairs to go there looked like. But I still said yes because I wanted to make them happy. But then we get there and I have to go up 4 flights of stairs with a not very useful railing, and it's taking me a long time. And everybody seems to be looking at me and I panic, and then my night is pretty much ruined. In a perfect world, this club is 100% accessible and there's an elevator. But in a world slightly better than this one, I tell my friends that I can't go because I don't know what the stairs to go there look like. And anyways, it's an EDM club and there's no way I'm gonna have a good time. Sorry. But maybe you can't relate to this exact scenario because your friends are not EDM fans. And if that's the case, well, lucky you. But it can be something else. Maybe your friends or a significant other want to go to this super new and trendy club that just opened, but because it's new and trendy, it's loud and crowded. And you know you can't handle all that movement and noise, but you still say yes to go because you don't want to seem like a party pooper or selfish. The reason why we have this bad habit is because we feel like our boundaries and our needs are a burden on people. But that's simply not true. This feeling of inadequacy is something we have to work on a daily basis because it is the base of everything else. No one will respect your boundaries if you don't respect them yourself. And I know it sounds harsh, but it's simply because I've seen it. I've told my boundaries to people and they insisted, and so I accepted. And from there on, it was a free for all because I had done it before, so none of my boundaries mattered anymore. This cycle, we have to break it for our own and deserved good. We deserve to have our bodies and mind respected and to feel at peace with the people we're hanging out with. But I know it can be hard to lead the way because it would be so much easier if people could just do it first. It would be so great to have people love us and respect us enough so that we don't have to do it, right? But again, that's just not the world that we live in. And keep in mind that even if it sounds harsh, I'm telling this to all of you, but I'm really telling this to myself. I also think you need to be the person that loves you and respects you the most because you just have to. And I would say it's especially more true if you are someone who requires help or need for others, whether that's to do smaller or larger tasks. You cannot be emotionally dependent on anyone. And really, that's true for anyone, disabled or not. You cannot allow yourself to expect people to love you so that you don't have to do it yourself. It is a saying as old as the world to say that if you don't love yourself, then nobody else can love you. But I don't really believe in that. First, it's horribly pessimistic. And I know way too well how it feels to hate yourself and then be told that if that's the case, well, nobody else can love you then. It hurts. It hurts so bad. But I also know that being emotionally independent is crucial because it will give you freedom. If you rely on someone to love you so that you don't have to, you will never leave that person, no matter how bad the relationship could get. And here I'm not talking about a romantic partner necessarily, that also works for friends. If you only have one friend who knows about your disability and who kind of respects your boundaries, you will keep them by your side no matter what awful things they could do to you. And that's just not a good feeling. Loving yourself is freedom, pure and simple. And once you can navigate relationship with others, and once you know how to deal with that on your own, then you can start navigating relationship with others. Now, of course, as I said earlier, you do not have to come out to everybody in your life. However, I truly believe that the relationships you have with people you're comfortable telling are simply deeper. Having friends is so important for so many reasons, but having good quality friends is the most important thing. Learning how to come out to friends is the first step to this, obviously, because you will have to do it more than once. People assume things, but I would like to believe that if you're coming out to friends that have known you for a long time, they will be supportive. But maybe you felt the need to tell them because a few times they proposed a place to hang out and you know that it won't work for you, so you can't really keep it in anymore. Or maybe it's a new friend and the first place they suggest is somewhere you know you can go or an activity you're not comfortable doing. If you feel comfortable enough to simply tell them, I suggest that you do so. But I get that this can be so horribly scary sometimes, so maybe just suggest other plans and see what they respond. Tell them about your disability if you're comfortable doing so, and understand that the people who matter will listen, understand, and make you feel safe. They will not try to change your mind and make you break your boundaries. They will understand that your disability is not something that you chose, and they will take your demand seriously. You're a great person, and someone who is worth it will know that and adapt to your needs. Coming out to someone about your disability is literally dangerous sometimes, and so they should be thankful that you trusted them with that information. They should also protect your choice to tell or not tell others. They should stand up for you and find ways to make you feel uncomfortable, for example, by suggesting other plans. A few months ago, I was out with a friend in a bar, and we met a group of people that were really nice. And at the end of the night, they suggested that we exchange numbers to hang out again. The first place that they suggested was bowling. I personally cannot play bowling very much at all because the balls are way too heavy for me to barely pick up. So I cannot throw them down the bowling alley at all. And so I don't enjoy playing bowling. Now, of course, my friend knows that because she saw me bowling at some point, and she very much noticed that I wasn't having a good time. I wasn't super comfortable telling these people that we had just met about my disability, and so she simply suggested that we go out to eat at this restaurant that we were just talking about a few minutes ago instead. And that I was, and the reason why we couldn't go bowling was because I am the worst bowling player the world has ever seen, and she could not let them see me play because I am that bad. Now, that's what a good friend does. They pick up on your discomfort and they suggest other plans so that you don't have to do it yourself. Do they drag your sports ability in the process? Maybe, maybe not, but for her defense, I was always bad at bowling. This sport is just not for me. I always sucked even before the symptoms of my illness started to show up, so it was fine for that one time. But again, this is what great friends do. They pick up on your discomfort and they advocate for you when needed. And this is important because I know that it can be hard to advocate for ourselves sometimes, and especially when we know the people. Last semester, I had to ask two of my teachers for classroom changes because the classrooms weren't accessible. To be honest, I didn't care. As a student, I should be able to go to class safely and without putting my body through additional stress. And if I must make 50 students go through a change for it to happen, I will. But my friends and my friends' friends, weirdly, that's way harder. And that is why you need friends who will do that for you if you are too shy to ask. True friends will feel your discomfort and advocate for you when needed. If you feel like someone won't do that for you because you feel like they just don't care enough, maybe don't open up to them about this. They don't deserve you being vulnerable. Never forget that being vulnerable to them is not something they deserve. And also never forget that you don't owe people anything. But what about other people? Do they owe you something? Again, you're the vulnerable one. If your friends want to go hiking or go to a crowded club, they can. But they should also make plans where you can feel included because you deserve to feel included. Marginalized people often feel inadequate and like they're not good enough. And I know this because I've been there so many times. I was out with friends and I was pulling them back because I couldn't make it up the stairs to that club or that bar. And I felt like they would want to be with someone other than me instead. But I know that it was often all in my head because the people around me love me and they feel lucky to have me in their life. And you should feel that way too with the people in your life. if for some reason you don't have people like this in your life, I'm deeply sorry for you, but I'm telling you, they will come. You deserve to have great friends who will cherish and love you for all that you are. So where we left off, we were talking about friends and how to come out to your friends, and start to kind of, what to look for in someone who is trustworthy when it comes to coming out. I also wanted to say that if for some reason you cannot stay for the whole presentation, or if you missed part of the beginning, this conference, the whole thing, is being recorded and will be posted online. I'm not sure where that can be found. I heard YouTube. So if you know me personally, because I know a few of you do, and you would like to have links for all um, the other talks that were given, let me know. But I'm sure Access and Praxis will make that available. So yeah, so if you have to quit in the middle of this, then you can always catch back or send it to your friends if you feel like this is important conversations to have. So let's jump back in. So in these people that you will judge to be trustworthy, which they have to be, uh, maybe there are some people that you would like to, receive some different type of love from, to put it simply. Now, of course, dating can be a little tricky for disabled folks sometimes, and there's a few reasons for that. I mean, the constant desexualization of disabled bodies being one of them, and also the fact that people often assume that disabled people require a lot more care than they do, and that we will just be too much in any type of relationship. They assume that we will be too much to handle sometimes without even asking us for needs. I personally have told people that I was seeing that I was disabled, and then have them reply that they would have to think about it, which is kind of weird because what do you need to think about? This doesn't change anything about our relationship, It's just that I can't go hiking. But we can still go to the movies or to the restaurant, or just stay home, order food, and make out, But the reason why people have this discomfort is because a lot of the times able people don't think they will ever be attracted to someone who's disabled. And when they see themselves in that situation, they get uncomfortable. Now, if you are an able-bodied person and you don't want to date someone who's disabled, then just ask yourself why. Ask yourself why, and try to base that reason on something that isn't ignorance or ableism. Try to justify it with something other than, I could get better than a disabled person, whatever that means. We talk about desirability politics when we look at the level to which someone is seen as desirable because of their social position. Your social position is constructed by your economic class, your social class, your sexual orientation, your race and ethnicity, whether you're cisgender or transgender, and also whether or not you're disabled. It takes into account the ways in which you're privileged and marginalized before taking an actual look at you. It's kind of like your identity resume. At first glance, I am a thin, cisgender Black woman, and that says something about my positionality. Being Black, I am marginalized because of my race, but I am also privileged because I'm not overweight and because I'm not trans, because I'm cis. But if my disability is mostly invisible, most people won't first consider it. However, it is a crucial part of my positionality because it makes me vulnerable. The capital for women is beauty, and the capital for men is women. In a heteronormative world, women show their worth through their ability to get one man, because God forbid you get to have more than one, but men show their worth through their ability to get multiple women who are seen as desirable. It might seem a bit controversial, but I personally think that men date according to desirability politics more than women do. I mean, we all do, but men more than women because they have more to gain in that situation. And of course, don't get me wrong, I absolutely don't want to overlook the experience of disabled men, but in a society where it is believed that all the woman can bring to the table is her body, when that body cannot do certain things because she is disabled, the situation is very different. As a woman attracted to men, it is impossible for me not to fall into the trap of linking my value as a human to the attention that I get from men. And this is something I must battle because we are socialized that way as women. Being Black and being racially marginalized is already a struggle of its own because the expectations for Black women are already so high. The bar for us is already so high. We must have a certain body type that is impossible or extremely difficult to achieve without plastic surgery. We must be lighter skinned and have hair that is not too curly. Otherwise, we are not seen as desirable. The fetishization of Black female sexuality exists through our bodies and what we are expected to do with our bodies. We must know how to dance, twerk, and be sexually dominant because that is the fetish that is attached to us. I'll be honest and say that physically there are things I simply cannot do because of my disability. The intersection of being Black, a woman, and disabled is sometimes problematic because Black women are seen in the media only through a sexual lens. And because of the limits some of us have with our bodies, we can feel like we defeated our only purpose, the one of being sexually competent. Now, I really wanted to mention race and specifically Blackness because I do believe it is an oppression that is apart and specific, but I'm sure that this is something that most disabled women can relate to, no matter their racial background. Now, with all being said, I obviously don't have to explain to you how that affects my dating life, and specifically when I date outside of my race. Non-Black people tend to have expectations for me and my body, and I simply cannot fulfill all of them sometimes. And that is something that is hard to live with. But again, like many aspects of my experience, that is something I have to battle. And if you are in the same shoes as me, for example, if you are a disabled woman, then that is something you also need to work on because we need to deconstruct these thoughts. Knowing that you're not at the top of the hierarchy when it comes to attractiveness and desirability is important because it can make you vulnerable to abuse, because it makes us insecure. They could do so much better than me is something that I told myself many times. I rejected people who tried to pursue me because in my mind, they wouldn't want me after they would know that I'm disabled. And on the opposite end, I also entertained people that I didn't really like or that didn't treat me right just because I was afraid of dying a virgin and alone. But I'm telling you, if this is something that you're doing in your personal life, you need to cut it out. Disabled folks are already so marginalized on a systemic level, and you cannot let it enter your personal relationships. And if you're an able-bodied person dating someone who's disabled or who's really close to a disabled person, you need to understand that many of us are vulnerable emotionally. And please help us deconstruct these thoughts. Love us, respect us, and remind us that we are great and attractive and worthy of love. Do not prey on our vulnerability because that can destroy someone's sense of self-worth for years. I know I am a great person. I don't need anyone to tell me. I know I'm funny, ambitious, and a great friend. And if for some reason you cannot see that in me, that is your problem, not mine. For a long time, I made it my problem, and it controlled my whole life. But as I said, this time is over, and it needs to be the same for you. You are a great person, and you are desirable, and it doesn't matter where you stand on the spectrum, what is your mobility like, or if you're someone who is dependent or independent in your everyday life. Having a progressive disease that doesn't have a cure, I often feel helpless. I often feel like I have no control over the future. But I have control over the people I let enter into my life, and so do you. I have standards, and I have the right to apply them, and that is the same for you. You have the right to decide who you let into your life and who you don't let into your life. But what if you opened up already? What if you feel like you were vulnerable with someone and now you're too scared to let them go? You have the right to decide who you're vulnerable with, whether that is emotionally, sexually, or physically. If you came out to someone about your disability, or if you asked for help to do something, maybe you will feel vulnerable afterwards. It will seem like this person knows something intimate about you or saw you be vulnerable, and that makes you uncomfortable. Now, to go back to what I said earlier, if you're not comfortable with your disability, this is likely to happen. But you need to protect your heart and protect your mind. And ask yourself this: am I safe coming out to this person? Will this person use this information against me later? If you hesitate to answer this, maybe think again before doing it. I personally prefer to come out on text because that way I have time to engage with the conversation at my own pace. If the person replies, I can take my time to read their answer and be sure that I'm in the right mindset to take every single one of these answers. I also try as much as possible not to put myself in situations that are uncomfortable for me in front of people I don't trust. Now, because we're talking about dating, I feel like it is important to touch on this a bit, but sexual intimacy is not something you owe people, first of all, but also it does not conquer everything else, meaning that sexual intimacy is not the most intimate type of intimacy. Because you're sexually intimate with someone doesn't mean that you owe them information about your disability or anything else about you, really. Whether that's if you decide not to go to someone's place to give them further information about your diagnosis or whatever it is. If that makes you uncomfortable, you do not have to do it. If you decide to explain your discomfort and mention your disability, that is fine. But if you decide not to, that is also fine. Now, I will just briefly touch on two things that I think are really important to mention, but I know they can be a bit touchy for some people. I didn't put anything on the slides, so if you're not comfortable talking about or comfortable hearing about sex, then you can just mute for a few seconds. But yeah, I did really think that this was something important to mention. But yeah, it won't be very long, so we will be back if you decide to mute this. First, do not break your physical boundaries for someone, even a romantic or a sexual partner. Second, do not break your sexual boundaries either. Trying to make up for your insecurities that are linked to your disability by giving sexual favors, extravagant or not, is not good for your self-esteem, and it will not last. Saying yes to things you want to say no to will not make someone stay, and even if it did, it won't make you happy. What you can do physically and sexually is enough. And someone who is not satisfied with that is simply not a good partner for you. So this is the end of the little content warning, I guess. So I will go on and mention that you should also be aware of people's attempt to bond with you over it. If you come out to people and they propose to help you or accommodate you, make sure that it is out of good faith and not for their own personal benefit. If for some reason receiving help from someone makes you uncomfortable because you don't really feel comfortable with that person, you have the right to refuse their help. And anyone who would say, but I just wanted to help you, I thought we were close, why do you refuse my help, why do you think I would judge you? All of this is negative attitude, and they clearly don't understand where you're coming from or your situation. You will know when someone tries to get something out of you, and if you don't notice it right away, know that you have the right to pull out at any time. Do not stay in a situation that is toxic for you just because that's where you are now. You deserve to feel good and to be treated good. So this is the end of my presentation. I will just go over a few tips and tricks in order to stay safe before, during, and after coming out. So Of course, that only works in a context where you have the freedom to come out or not to someone, um, but hopefully it can still help you navigate all types of coming out situations. So first, of course, be comfortable with giving this person this information. In other words, do I want to come out to this person at all? Second, be physically safe in public, at home with someone you trust, over text or on the phone. 3, will they respect my boundaries? 4, trust the person's intention, meaning will they use this information against me later? 5, will they protect my confidentiality, meaning will they tell others? And 6, will they stand up for me if I need them to? So hopefully this was useful to at least some of you here. And if you're not someone who's disabled, but you know someone who is, then maybe try and take these tips and make sure that you apply them with your friends, with your significant others or family members, because these are really things that can change your relationship with that person and make them feel more safe. So I saw already a few questions in the Q&A section. I will leave you drop more below if you have them. In the meantime, you can find me on Instagram at Lonely Alley. This is where I post my writing, announce when I wrote something new. You can also find me on Vocal Media. This is my blog where I write. I recently wrote an article about desirability politics, if that's something you would like to look into further. It was taking a more general approach. And then I also had the huge pleasure of being a guest on the Woke or Whatever podcast. And we talked about desirability politics and also how it performs in the Black community specifically. I was also paired with an amazing guest. Her name is Yon, and she came from the perspective of a plus-size Black woman. So this podcast is the number 9, and it is available on Spotify and Apple Podcast. I put the link to my blog in the Q&A, in the chat section, and as well as the link for the podcast. So you can just scroll up and you should see it. So yeah, I guess we will go for, I see a lot of people talking, okay. So we will go onto the Q&A now. Let's see how.
Do you want me to read the questions to you?
Yeah, let's do that. I guess I'll just leave this here and then I'll switch to Instagram.
Perfect. If you stop screen sharing, everyone should be able to see you.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to do a quick check. Can everyone see both the presenter and the ASL interpreter?
Okay.
Perfect. I see some hands going up. I see some yes in the chat.
Oh, okay.
All right, perfect. So the first question we have here. So Remy asked, what kind of accommodations do you think your dance program should have given you for you to succeed?
Okay, so hi Remy, thank you for your question. So back then, I didn't have, I had more mobility than I do now because, like I said, I do have a progressive illness. So I guess what would have been really helpful for me at the time would have been to sit down with the administration and my dance teachers and, tell them honestly what my limitations were, and then have them, write them down, and so that they knew what I was dealing with, and then try to have them judge me on, like rhythm, memory, because I was in musical theater, like the acting, because we did have to like act when we were dancing. You don't want to be completely blank in the face. So to have them judge me on that, and not on like how beautiful is your split, or how wide can you open your legs when you do certain movement, or how high you can jump. This would have been something that I would have appreciated, and that's what people what the administration told me they could do for me, and then turns out they couldn't. So it would have been just to have a decent conversation with them, and uh, have them judge me on things that aren't finishing when it came to some of the movements. And as for the movements that I simply couldn't do, it would have been to maybe replace them with things that my body was capable of doing. So yeah, that would have been really appreciated, but it's in the past now. So, but thank you for your question. So I guess we can go to the second one now.
Okay. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hi.
Okay. So Edgar asked, with the accommodations in the colleges and universities being not that much helpful, is there a way that you think that we as disabled folks can change that? For example, Edgar writes, I don't have a diagnosis for my body, for my legs mostly. I use a cane because it is less painful. I asked the disabled services for a key to the elevator, yet I was told that I need to be in a wheelchair. I guess this is a follow-up question. How can we get gatekeeping out of disability communities?
Great. Hi, Edgar. This is a very good question. I am really sorry to hear that. I guess when I personally was in college and the symptoms were starting to show up, I went to a college that did not have escalators. They had an elevator, but it was a lot of stairs, a lot of classes on the fourth level, and I simply went up and asked them for a key, and you had to give a deposit, and then when you brought back the key, they would give you your $20 back. Now, I do think, especially if asking for a key um, for the elevators, if you have to go to the disability center, if I understood correctly, um, to have that, I do feel like it is very like it makes no sense that they would have such policies in place. I would suggest maybe try and see if there are disabled people working there, and ask them for their opinion on this, because yeah, it truly makes no sense to me that something would happen. Now, in terms of gatekeeping in the community, I do think that it is important to have disabled people at the forefront as much as possible, in the forefront of our communities. And when it comes to resources, because yeah, of course, having an able-bodied person tell you that you need to be in a wheelchair in order to use an elevator, it doesn't make sense, but I guess this person doesn't understand. So I do think that it is hard advocating for yourself on a daily basis, all the time, uh, just for yourself. So sometimes not every disabled people is comfortable advocating on a larger field, but I do think that the ones who do have that ability and who are comfortable doing so should work, and um, so that everybody else in the community uh, can be helped. So I guess my quick answer would be to have um, disabled people be at the forefront of our own communities. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to go back to the first question because we had some problems with the interpreter and the question was missed. Can you sort of go over your answer for what kind of accommodations do you think your dance program should have given for you to succeed?
Right, of course. So, but like I said, back then, because my illness is degenerative, I did have more mobility back then than I do now. At the time, what I would have really appreciated would have been to just have a conversation with them, to have them sit me down and to let me explain what my limitations were at the time, and then have them understand that and respect that and believe that, and then from there on, judge me when it came to dance, right? To have them judge me on memory, rhythm, and acting, and not on, how high can you jump, how wide can you open your legs, and things like that. And as for the movements that I couldn't do, to have them replace them with something else, a movement that I could do and perform, and then have them judge me on these things and not on the finishing, appearance um, of my movements, essentially.
All right, thank you. Lo asked, Lo said, this was very enlightening. My question is, what can we do in our everyday life to be a good ally for the disabled community?
Hi, Lo. I know them personally. Thank you for being here. It means a lot. So I think on an everyday basis, it would be, I don't know if you mean like to your disabled friends or, partners, or just for the community in general. I would say something that is very important is to believe us and to not stay silent in moments of injustice, because, like I said, a lot of disabled people are just, don't have the spoons to advocate for themselves and even last for other people, unfortunately, which is something I totally understand. I personally feel like I have that, I have the emotional strength to do this. And so that's why it's so important for me to be part of events like this, to write about it, to speak up. But some people just don't, because living in their own bodies is hard enough, which is totally understandable. So as an ally, it's to stand up for us, to believe us, to make us feel safe, um, to educate yourself, to support disabled creators. That's very important, because I mean, whether that's with being able-bodied or not, or racial representation in sexual orientation, gender, all of that, it's very clear that the representation of, the human being is very monochrome. So support disabled creators and make sure that every disabled person can feel safe around you. That's very important. So yeah, thank you for your question.
Awesome, thank you so much. An anonymous person asked, I have some friends who have similar disabilities to mine. However, when I try and discuss how a situation is inaccessible to me, they often invalidate that since it's not inaccessible to them. So do you have any suggestions on how to navigate that situation?
Well, I'm very sorry to hear that. I think it would be maybe to sit your friends down and, make sure that they know that you're not stopping them from going to these inaccessible places. That, like I said in the talk, if your friends want to run a marathon or, go to 5 raves in a row, that's okay. But to tell them honestly that it hurts you when they don't include you in their, in their activities. So if they, after that conversation, they don't realize that, you're being hurt by their actions, I I truly don't think it is a safe relationship, And like I said, there are other disabled folks who have the exact same needs as you do. I personally don't really have friends who are disabled, or very, very few. So, and they're usually not, people that I hang out with on a regular basis. So it can be difficult to feel like you can relate in terms of that, but um, you really just need to keep in mind that what you're asking is not enough. And if for some reason they can't fulfill these needs, then that is not, that is not something you should have to deal with. But hopefully you find people who understand what you need.
Thank you. We have a question from James. So James asked, do you have any advice for a long-term couple who have recently become mobility discordant and how to navigate this adjustment?
Hi, James. Okay, so I get by mobility discordant, do you mean that the two people don't have the same mobility need, the same ability? Is that? I don't know. I'm not. I just want to make sure that I understand the term right.
James says yes, due to an accident.
Right. Okay. I think if we're talking about a long-term couple, it's, you obviously know each other. We're not at the stage where it's like, oh, you don't really know the person, so you don't really have that many memories or just key points to relate to. So I do feel like it should be easier to communicate that. And I think there's, like I said, there's always ways to um, connect with other people, and specifically, a partner. If you have this rich relationship, so to try and maybe like modify the activities you were doing before and see if there is a way to make them more accessible for the person who has lost mobility recently, and to also just take to cherish the smaller things sometimes, like I said, just staying at home and watch a movie, or, like, these are great quality moments. And I think in, uh, we may get really like bamboozled by the flashy and the cool big things, but I think there's really beauty and comfort in, quote unquote, smaller moments. So yeah, my two tips would be to don't forget that smaller activities can be really great and rich in comfort, and then try to see if you can adapt the things that you were doing before. So yeah.
Thank you. Do you want me to give you another question?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So Marissa wrote, Ali, I often offer adult education sessions. These are informal settings and sometimes not a lot of prep or organization for the agencies. So Marissa's asking if you have any suggestions on how to effectively. Oh,
Mitchell, do you mind just repeating that? I just missed something in the second
yeah,
sentence. Thank you.
So Marissa asks, Ali, I often offer adult education sessions in informal settings, and sometimes not a lot of prep or organization is there for the agencies. So Marissa is asking if you have any suggestions on how to effectively and respectfully ask about needs and accommodations without making it a public question, and when to do that.
Hi, Marissa. Thank you for the question. I think, me personally, the way that I like to be asked about these things, like I said, on paper, I think it could be great because, saying verbally, I need this, can be kind of difficult for disabled folks, because yeah, it's hard to ask and advocate for yourself. So maybe on paper, I'm not sure when you say like informal settings. I don't know if you mean like because these are set like sessions online, or but I think maybe sending an email prior would be great. That way people don't have to reply in person, because that can, like I said, that can be difficult. Uh, on paper, maybe if it is like an in-person session, and have people, reply through like a questionnaire, or again online. And yeah, I think try to phrasing the question so that they're pretty direct. That way it can, I don't know, me personally, like it feels easier that way, because then I have no other choice but to, you know, to see the question for what it is and be like, okay, if I need something, I'm gonna have to demand it. So yeah, I would say maybe try not to do that in person, because it can make people feel uncomfortable.
All right, thank you. So I see there's one more question, so I think we have time to take it.
Awesome.
So it's from Lo again. So Lo says, what do you do when you're in a difficult situation in public? For example, you need to go somewhere for an important meeting, but there's only stairs to access the room. So Lo is asking, would you ask for someone's help? Would you take the stairs? If so, can you explain a little bit more your condition? How do you feel during and after that effort? And then Lo's just writing, you're the first person I met with a muscular dystrophy disease, but I want to make sure that I understand.
Sure. So I guess I'll start with the end of the question. There's many types of muscular dystrophies, and the type that I personally have is, like I said, called limb-girdle. Um, but I also have, because I did a whole DNA test, and I also have like I don't have this standard uh, type. Like one of my, because basically muscular dystrophy is an error in the DNA, in our DNA, and I don't have the standard error. I have like a special error. That's the way that my neurologist said it. I have a special error because I'm special, and so I follow a lot of creators who have liberal muscular dystrophy like me, but while our limitations are kind of similar, it is still kind of different. Everybody is different. And I talked to my doctor about this, and he is currently following about like 10 patients who have the same type as me. But he said it like, it's none of you are the same, like this muscle for you is stronger, and then but then weaker than someone else in another, so um it really differs, but generally speaking, it's just like I said, my body can't repair after, well, repairs partially from muscle trauma. So uh yeah, and then as you grow older, um the portion that is not being repaired kind of just grows, um and that's why you end up like losing mobility and getting weaker. Now, as for what I do when I'm in difficult situations in public, like I said, I kind of try not to put myself in these situations as much as possible. I like to say that I'm the Google Map queen. I Google Map everywhere I go to see what everything looks like. I am also an actual spy, so I will find out where you live before I get there and see what it looks like. So yeah, and that helps me not put myself in difficult situations. Now, I had some instances where, um, Google Map was a little hard on me, and I thought I would be able to handle things, and then I can't. Um, in these situations, I do ask for help if I can clearly see that, it's just not going to work. One thing that is really tricky, especially with Google Map, when you look, is sometimes, especially in Montreal, like I don't understand, but a lot of bars, restaurants, apartment buildings have like a really big step before you actually get in. And one of the big things for me is I can go up the stairs, I can climb like a big step, but I need to lean against something. So stair railings are very important for me, because my arms are stronger than my legs. So I kind of need to like push myself with my arms, because my legs really can't do much on their own. So yeah, I do ask for help when I'm in public. I hate it. I absolutely hate it, especially because I have seen it, because people don't think I'm disabled. I feel like a lot of people think I'm like faking. Like I've asked people for help to, like go up a step or something, and then be like, it's not that high. Like I'm like, come on, and then they leave, and I'm like, great, that's nice, thank you. But yeah, it's not fun to have to do it, but sometimes you just have to. And or like when I fall in public, because it happens, I feel like people kind of respond to that though. They're like, ooh, she's on the ground, and they help me. But again, I do think being seen as like not necessarily, and yeah, that's something I want to mention, not being seen as like a threatening person, because I'm a woman, because I have like feminine features, and because I'm like not that tall and kind of petite, people are more willing to help me than a lot of other disabled people, I'm sure. But yeah, it's still, some people just also don't do it. So yeah, I do ask for help. It is not fun, but I think if there's any disabled person watching right now and who can kind of relate to that, it's very important to take that and be like, you know what, like I need help right now. Like I need help. I can't stay outside of this cafe for 5 hours because I can go in on my own. So and understand that if somebody doesn't want to help you, try to just have it like go over your head and be like, okay, this person is not responsive, but that's not my problem, and then see if someone else can help you instead. So try not to take it too personal, even though I know it's hard. But yeah, just trying to just move and tell yourself that this is not the type of energy you need right now. You need to focus on being as comfortable as you can be.
Thank you so much. And this was a really great presentation.
Thank you so much.
I think we should finish. Kelly wrote, this was an amazing and complete piece of advocacy, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. Extremely empowering.
Thank you so much, Kelly. It means the world to me.
So I want to say again, thank you, Alicia, for coming on and giving this presentation. It was really great. I think everyone really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm seeing in the chat, people are saying thank you. So I think it was really great.
Oh, all right, great. Thank you so much to everyone. And yeah, I'm sure if you missed some of it, you can go back and watch when they will be posted, and as well as all the amazing presentations that were given during the conference yesterday as well.
All right, thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.